Captain Sarah Chen stared at the navigation display and frowned. The numbers made no sense. According to the computer, they were nowhere near where they should be. The jump had gone wrong. Very wrong. "Status report," she called out to her crew on the bridge of the UES Endeavour. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his station, sweat beading on his forehead. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures all around us. Ships, stations, structures I can't even identify. This isn't anywhere in our star charts." Chen walked over to the main view screen and felt her breath catch. Space around them was filled with enormous structures that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Massive ring worlds spun slowly in the distance. Ships the size of cities moved between them in organized formations. Everything was alien but clearly advanced far beyond human technology. "Well," Chen said quietly, "I guess we found someone." The Endeavour was a deep space exploration ship, one of humanity's newest and best. They had been testing a new faster-than-light drive when something went wrong with the jump calculations. Now they found themselves in what was clearly the heart of an alien civilization. "Captain, we're being scanned," reported Ensign Kumar from the communications station. "Multiple sources. The scans are incredibly detailed." Before Chen could respond, space around them lit up with new arrivals. Ships began appearing out of nowhere, materializing with flashes of blue light. Each vessel was at least 10 times larger than the Endeavour. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. 37 ships and counting, Torres said, his voice tight with tension, all of them bigger than anything in our fleet back home. The alien ships moved with practiced efficiency, forming a perfect sphere around the human vessel. Their weapons weren't pointed at the Endeavour, but the message was clear. The humans were trapped. Chen had spent 15 years in the Earth fleet. She had seen solar storms, pirate attacks, and equipment failures that should have killed everyone aboard. This was just another problem to solve. "Open all communication channels," she ordered. "All frequencies, all formats we know." Within minutes, a response came. The main screen flickered and showed an alien face. The creature had blue-gray skin stretched tight over a skull that was too long and too narrow. Its eyes were large and completely black. When it spoke, the words came through the translation system in a cold, mechanical voice. "Unknown vessel. You have entered the space of the Vorthak Dominion. State your origin and purpose." Chen stepped forward. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Endeavour. We're explorers from humanity. Our navigation system malfunctioned and we ended up here by accident." The alien stared at her for a long moment. "Humanity is unknown to our records. Your vessel's technology is primitive. You will submit to boarding and inspection." "That's fine," Chen replied calmly. "We're happy to cooperate with proper authorities." The alien's expression changed slightly. Most species they encountered either begged for mercy or tried to fight when faced with Dominion power. This human seemed almost relaxed. "You will power down your weapons and shields," the alien continued. "We don't have our weapons powered up," Chen said, "and our shields are just for navigation hazards, not combat. You're welcome to come aboard." Admiral Zexthul, commander of the Dominion patrol fleet, had performed this same procedure thousands of times over his long career. New species were discovered regularly as the Dominion expanded. Most followed the same pattern. First came fear, then desperate attempts to fight or flee, then eventual submission to Dominion rule. These humans were different. As his boarding party materialized on their ship, Zexthul expected to find crew members cowering in terror or attempting some futile last stand. Instead, he found them calmly going about their duties. A human female approached him. She was smaller than most species the Dominion had encountered, with brown skin and dark hair tied back in a simple style. She showed no signs of fear or awe at his presence. "Welcome aboard," she said. "I'm Captain Chen. Can I offer you and your people something to drink? We have coffee, tea, water." Zexthul had been offered tribute before, valuable items meant to buy mercy or favor. But simple refreshments? That was new. "We require access to your data systems, your weapons inventory, and your star charts," he said, following standard procedure. "Of course," Chen replied. "Lieutenant Torres will show your people around. We don't have much in the way of weapons. Some mining charges, a couple of emergency pulse rifles. Nothing that would be useful against ships." As the Dominion troops spread through the ship, Zexthul found himself increasingly puzzled. The humans were cooperating fully, but not out of fear. They seemed genuinely curious about their visitors. Several crew members asked polite questions about Dominion technology and culture. Your ship is quite small, Sexthul observed, looking around the cramped bridge. It's big enough for what we need, Chen said with a shrug. We're not trying to conquer anyone, just exploring, learning new things. All species seek to expand their territory and power. It is the natural way. Chen tilted her head slightly. Is it? We've found that cooperation usually works better than conquest. Takes less energy, fewer people get hurt. The Admiral studied her carefully. In his experience, species that claimed to prefer peace were usually the weakest ones, trying to avoid conflict because they knew they would lose. But there was something different about this human's calm confidence. You do not seem concerned about your situation, he said. Should I be? Chen asked. You seem reasonable. We're not threatening anyone. I assume we can work something out. Sexthul had conquered systems where entire fleets fought to the last ship rather than surrender. He had seen proud warrior races break down in tears when faced with Dominion might. But this small human female was treating a first contact with a galactic superpower like a minor scheduling problem. His troops finished their inspection and reported their findings. The human ship carried no significant weapons, no hidden defenses, no signs of advanced military technology. Their computers contained star charts for a small region of space, containing perhaps 50 solar systems with human settlements. Your species controls a very small territory, Sexthul observed. We're still expanding, Chen said, slowly and carefully. We like to make sure we understand what we're getting into before we commit to anything big. The Admiral made his decision. These humans would be brought before the Regional Council for the standard submission ceremony. Their small territory would be absorbed into the Dominion, and they would become another vassal species. It was routine. You will accompany us to Nexus Prime, he announced. Your species will be given the opportunity to join the Dominion as a client state. That sounds interesting, Chen said. I'd like to learn more about your government. Will there be time for questions? Sexthul stared at her. Questions? Most species barely manage to stammer out desperate pleas for mercy during the submission ceremony. There will be time for you to formally acknowledge Dominion authority over your territory, he said. We'll see, Chen replied with a slight smile. I'm not authorized to make decisions for all of humanity, but I'm sure we can have a productive discussion. As the Dominion ships began moving toward their destination, Sexthul found himself looking forward to the council session for the first time in decades. These humans were definitely different from anything the Dominion had encountered before. He was curious to see how they would react when they truly understood the power they were dealing with. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the alien fleet escort them through space filled with wonders beyond human imagination. Her crew was taking detailed scans and recordings of everything they saw. Whatever happened next, humanity would learn from this encounter. She had a feeling things were about to get very interesting. Nexus Prime was a world that existed to impress and intimidate. The planet's surface was covered in massive structures that reached up into the clouds. Floating cities drifted through the upper atmosphere like metal islands. Ships from 1,000 different worlds came and went in streams of traffic that never stopped. Captain Chen watched it all through the view screen of her shuttle as they descended toward the planet's surface. Her 3-person diplomatic team sat beside her, taking notes and recording everything they saw. Lieutenant Torres, Dr. Martinez, the xenobiologist, and communications specialist Park were the best people she could have asked for in this situation. Look at the size of those buildings, Torres whispered. Some of them must be 50 kilometers tall. Architecture designed to make visitors feel small, Dr. Martinez observed. Classic dominance display. The shuttle landed in a bay that could have held 100 human ships. Alien beings of dozens of different species moved around the area, loading and unloading cargo, performing maintenance, going about their daily business. All of them wore the same style of clothing with the same symbols that marked them as part of the Dominion. Admiral Sexthul met them at the landing pad, along with an escort of heavily armed soldiers. Follow me, he said. The council waits. They were led through corridors that seemed designed to dwarf anyone walking through them. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into shadows. Walls were covered with displays showing maps of Dominion territory, images of conquered worlds, and lists of vassal species. Everything was meant to show the overwhelming power and reach of the Galactic Empire. Other beings walked through the halls, but Chen noticed they all moved carefully, keeping their eyes down when Dominion officials passed. Fear and submission seemed to be the normal way of life here. How many species belong to the Dominion? Dr. Martinez asked as they walked. Over 3,000, Zextel replied with obvious pride. All brought into civilization through Dominion guidance. That's impressive, Chen said. How do you manage to govern so many different cultures effectively? The Admiral looked at her strangely. They follow Dominion law. It is not complicated. The throne room was the largest single space Chen had ever seen. The walls curved up and away until they seemed to meet at a point somewhere in the distant ceiling. Thousands of aliens filled tiered seating areas representing dozens of species. At the center, on a raised platform, sat the most imposing alien Chen had yet encountered. Lord Kethmore was twice the height of a human, with skin that looked like polished stone and eyes that glowed with their own inner light. His voice, when he spoke, seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humans, he said, the word echoing through the vast chamber. You stand before the Regional Council of the Vorthak Dominion. Your species has been evaluated and found to possess the basic requirements for civilization. You will now be given the choice that all intelligent species receive. Chen stepped forward. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council. We're honored to be here. A murmur ran through the assembled crowd. Most species were barely able to speak when brought before the council. You may submit to Dominion authority, Kethmore continued, accepting the guidance and protection of our superior civilization. Your worlds will be governed by Dominion administrators. Your resources will serve the greater good of the Empire, and your people will find their place in the natural order. He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the silence. Or you may choose the path of resistance, in which case your primitive civilization will be removed to make way for more worthy species. The chamber fell completely silent. This was the moment when most species broke down completely. Some begged for mercy, others collapsed in despair. A few tried to make desperate bargains. All eventually submitted to the inevitable. Chen looked around the enormous room, taking in the thousands of watching eyes, the displays of power, the obvious expectation that she would fall to her knees and beg to serve the Dominion. Those are interesting options, she said in a conversational tone that carried clearly through the chamber, but I'm afraid we'll have to decline both of them. The silence that followed was so complete that Chen could hear her own heartbeat. Explain yourself, Kethmore said, his glowing eyes narrowing. Well, we don't accept Dominion authority over human space, Chen said calmly. We're a sovereign species with our own government, but we're not interested in fighting you either. That would be wasteful for everyone involved. Then what do you propose? The question came out like a growl. Formal diplomatic relations, Chen replied. Trade agreements, cultural exchange, maybe some joint scientific projects. We could learn a lot from each other. The murmur that ran through the chamber was louder this time and had a different quality, confusion mixed with disbelief. You dare to suggest that your primitive species is equal to the Dominion? Kethmore's voice had risen to a roar. Not equal in size or age, Chen said, still maintaining her calm tone, but equal in the right to exist as we choose. That seems reasonable to me. Lord Kethmore stood up from his throne, his massive form casting a shadow over the human delegation. Your pathetic fleet of primitive ships will be destroyed within days of our decision to act. Your worlds will burn, your people will be scattered to the void. What possible reason do you have for such foolish confidence? Chen was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. When she spoke, her voice was steady and matter-of-fact. My species has survived ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. We've endured plagues that killed half our population. We've fought wars that turned our cities to ash and our farmland to poison. We've faced extinction from asteroids, supervolcano eruptions, and our own nuclear weapons. She looked directly at Kethmore, meeting his glowing gaze without flinching. We've been to the bottom of our deepest oceans and walked on worlds with no atmosphere. We've built machines that think and created art that makes people weep. Every single day for millions of years, something has tried to kill us. And here we are. The chamber was completely silent now. So no, Lord Kethmore, your warships don't particularly scare us. We've seen worse. The alien lord stared down at her for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter but somehow more dangerous. You will be given time to reconsider your position. Perhaps when you truly understand the power of the Dominion, you will make a wiser choice. Perhaps, Chen agreed. We're always willing to learn new things. As the human delegation was escorted from the chamber, Admiral Zexthul found himself walking beside Dr. Martinez. Your captain is either very brave or very foolish, he said. She's very human, Martinez replied. That probably looks like the same thing from your perspective. Back in their assigned quarters, the human team reviewed the day's events. Well, that went about as well as expected, Torres said. They really don't know what to do with us, Park observed. Their entire system is based on fear and submission. When that doesn't work, they're lost, Chen nodded. The question is what they'll do next. They can't just let us go. That would set a precedent that might encourage other species to resist. But they also can't attack us without knowing more about what they're dealing with. So we wait, Dr. Martinez said. We wait, Chen agreed, and we learn everything we can about how this empire really works. Outside their windows, the lights of Nexus Prime stretched to the horizon. Somewhere in the vast city, Lord Kethmore and his advisors were trying to figure out what to do about the humans who refused to follow the rules that had governed galactic politics for millennia. Chen had a feeling that both sides were about to learn some very interesting lessons about each other. News traveled fast in both human and Dominion space. The story of the humans who refused to submit to the Regional Council became the talk of every space station, trading post, and government building across dozens of star systems. In the Dominion, most species reacted with a mixture of disbelief and horror. The humans had to be insane. No one defied the Vorthak and lived to tell about it. Some alien government sent messages to the Regional Council, begging them not to let human foolishness reflect badly on their own loyalty to the Dominion. In human space, the reaction was different. When Captain Chen's report reached Earth, President Williams called an emergency session of the Defense Council. The report was clear. Humanity had made contact with a massive galactic empire that viewed humans as primitives to be conquered or destroyed. What are our options? The President asked Admiral Rodriguez, commander of the Earth Fleet. We fight or we surrender, Rodriguez said bluntly. Chen made it clear that those are the only choices the Dominion recognizes. What are our chances? Unknown. We have no idea how advanced their technology really is, or how many ships they can bring to bear. But surrendering means the end of human independence. We become slaves to alien masters. The President was quiet for a long moment. How long do we have? Chen thinks they'll send a demonstration fleet first. Something to show us the futility of resistance. That gives us maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for war with a galactic empire. It wasn't much time, but humans had worked with less. Lord Kethmore assembled what the Dominion called a demonstration fleet. 200 warships led by Admiral Vexcon, one of their most experienced commanders. The fleet was large enough to destroy any resistance the humans might offer, but not so large as to seem like the Dominion took the primitives seriously as a threat. Destroy one of their colonial worlds, Kethmore instructed. Make it clean and quick. Leave enough survivors to spread word of what happens to those who defy the Dominion. The humans will submit within hours. Admiral Vexcon had performed this type of demonstration dozens of times. It was a standard procedure. Show overwhelming force, destroy something important but not irreplaceable, then accept the inevitable surrender. Most species required only one demonstration. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. New Geneva was one of humanity's newer colonies, home to 3 million people and important agricultural facilities. It should have been lightly defended, perfect for a demonstration. Instead, Admiral Vexcon found himself facing the UES. Battlefleet Ironwall, 12 human dreadnoughts, arranged in perfect formation between the Dominion fleet and the inner system. This is Admiral Rodriguez. Of the United Earth Fleet, came a transmission from the lead human ship. You have entered human space with hostile intent. Turn around and leave immediately. Vexcon was amused. 12 primitive ships against 200 advanced Dominion vessels? The humans were either braver or more foolish than he had expected. Human Admiral, he replied. You are facing the might of the Vorthak Dominion. Surrender now and your people will be treated with mercy. The response came immediately, without hesitation or negotiation. Negative. You brought war to our space. We'll return the favor. The human ships opened fire without another word. Vexcon had expected primitive kinetic weapons, maybe some basic energy cannons. What hit his fleet was something entirely different. The human ships fired streams of projectiles that moved at significant fractions of light speed, followed by fusion warheads that detonated with the force of small suns. But what really shocked him was the humans' tactics. Instead of fighting defensively, Trying to protect their world, the human ships immediately went on the attack. They moved in coordinated groups, targeting Dominion ships' engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Within the first hour, VexCon had lost 30 ships. The humans had lost 2. "Fall back to defensive formation," he ordered, but the humans didn't give him time to regroup. They pursued his retreating ships, continuing their devastating attacks. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "the humans are broadcasting something." "What are they saying?" "It's not directed at us, sir. They're talking to their colonies, telling them that the attack has been repelled and they're pursuing the enemy fleet back to Dominion space." Pursuing? No species had ever pursued a Dominion fleet. They fought desperately to defend their homes, then submitted when faced with inevitable defeat. They didn't go on the attack. By the end of the battle, VexCon had lost over half his fleet. The survivors limped back toward Dominion space, only to discover that human strike forces had somehow gotten ahead of them and were already hitting Dominion supply bases and communication relays throughout the sector. "How?" VexCon demanded of his tactical officer.
"How did they move so fast?"
"Unknown, sir. Their ships seemed to have some kind of rapid deployment capability we weren't aware of. What the Dominion didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for interstellar war since they first achieved faster-than-light travel. Earth's military doctrine was built around the assumption that any alien contact might be hostile. Every human colony had hidden weapon stockpiles, emergency defense plans, and rapid response fleets stationed nearby. More importantly, humans had learned the lessons of their own history. The best defense was often a good offense. When faced with a larger, more powerful enemy, you didn't sit back and wait to be destroyed. You struck fast, you struck hard, and you made the enemy pay a price they weren't willing to pay. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the command center of Earth Fleet headquarters, watching reports come in from across human space. Every available ship was being deployed. Every colony was activating its defenses. Every research station and mining facility was being converted for military. "Production status report," he called. "Out. Strike Group Alpha has destroyed the Dominion supply depot at Kethmore 7, reported his operations officer. Strike Group Beta is en route to their shipyard at Vex Prime. Strike Group Gamma is hitting communication relays along the Meridian Corridor. Casualties? Light so far. The Dominion forces weren't expecting our level of tactical coordination." Rodriguez nodded. "The humans were using every advantage they had: superior tactical flexibility, better intelligence gathering, and most importantly, the element of surprise. The Dominion had expected primitives who would cower and beg. Instead, they got a species that had been preparing for this kind of war for generations. On Nexus Prime, Lord Kethmore received report after report of human attacks across Dominion space. Bases destroyed, fleets scattered, supply lines cut. In 3 days, the humans had done more damage to Dominion infrastructure than any enemy in the past century. "How many ships do they have?" he demanded. "Our estimates were wrong," Admiral Zexthal admitted. "They appear to have at least 10 times more military vessels than we initially calculated. And their technology is more advanced than our scans suggested." "That's impossible. We analyzed their ship. It was primitive. Their exploration ship was primitive, my lord. Their warships are something entirely different." Kethmore stared at the tactical display showing human strike forces operating throughout his sector. "What kind of species builds exploration ships and warships to completely different technological standards?" "A species that expects to fight for survival," Zexthal said quietly. "A species that has learned not to show their real capabilities until they need them." Captain Chen, still in her quarters on Nexus Prime, watched the reports of human military actions with mixed feelings. She had hoped diplomacy might work, but the Dominion had chosen force instead. Now both sides were committed to a path that could only end in victory for one and destruction for the other, unless someone found a third option. Her door chimed. Admiral Zexthal entered, looking older and more tired than when she had first met him. "Your people fight well," he said. "We've had a lot of practice," Chen replied. "This cannot continue. Too many will die." Chen looked at him carefully. "That's up to your leadership. We didn't start this war. But perhaps you could help end it." For the first time since arriving in Dominion space, Chen felt a spark of hope. Maybe there was still a chance for reason to prevail over pride. The war between humanity and the Vorthak Dominion entered its third week with no clear victor. Across dozens of star systems, battles raged between human strike forces and Dominion fleets. What had started as a simple demonstration of superior power had become a grinding conflict that neither side seemed able to win. On worlds throughout Dominion space, other species watched the fighting with growing amazement. For the first time in centuries, someone was matching the Vorthak ship for ship, strategy for strategy. The humans fought with a ruthless efficiency that impressed even battle-hardened alien warriors. Captain Chen, now promoted to admiral after the original Admiral Rodriguez was killed in a battle near the Kepler station, stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant as her task force approached a Dominion command ship that had been crippled in the latest engagement. The enemy vessel hung dead in space, its engines dark and its weapons offline. "No response to our hails," reported Lieutenant Torres, "but we're reading life signs throughout the ship." "Boarding parties," Chen ordered. "Full search and rescue protocols." Her Marines looked at her in surprise. "Ma'am?" asked Sergeant Williams. "You heard me. Find survivors, provide medical aid, and secure any intelligence materials. These people are prisoners of war, not targets." The boarding operation revealed something the humans hadn't expected. The Dominion command ship wasn't just a military vessel. It was a mobile headquarters with families aboard. Vorthak officers lived on their ships with their mates and children, making the vessels into floating communities as well as war machines. Chen found herself in the ship's medical bay, watching her doctors work alongside captured Dominion medics to treat the wounded. The alien injured were as surprised as anyone by the human response. "Why do you help us?" asked a young Vorthak officer who had suffered severe burns in the battle. "Because you're wounded," Dr. Martinez replied simply. "That's reason enough." Lord Kethmore himself was among the prisoners. The proud Dominion leader had been commanding the fleet personally when the humans disabled his flagship. He lay in the medical bay with a head injury, conscious but unable to move without help. Chen pulled up a chair beside his bed. "Lord Kethmore, I'm sorry about your injuries." The alien lord stared at her with those glowing eyes. "You show mercy to your enemies. This is unexpected, is it? We're not monsters. We didn't want this war. Yet you fight it with remarkable skill." Kethmore's voice was weak but still carried authority. "Your species has surprised us. We thought you were primitive, barely capable of spaceflight. Instead, we find warriors who make even our best admirals look like novices." Chen was quiet for a moment. "We're not warriors by choice. We're survivors by necessity. There's a difference." "Explain this difference." "A warrior fights for glory, for conquest, for honor. A survivor fights because the alternative is death. We don't enjoy war, Lord Kethmore. We're just very good at it because we've had to be." Over the next several days, as prisoner exchanges were arranged and temporary ceasefires were negotiated for humanitarian purposes, something unexpected began to happen. Humans and Dominion forces started talking to each other. The conversations began with practical matters, arranging medical aid for wounded, coordinating the return of bodies to their homeworlds, establishing rules for the treatment of prisoners. But gradually, they evolved into something deeper. A Dominion admiral found himself discussing military tactics with his human counterpart, each impressed by the other's innovative approaches. A Vorthak engineer spent hours comparing notes with a human technician on ship design philosophy. Medical personnel from both sides worked together to develop treatments for injuries that were common in space combat. Most importantly, ordinary soldiers and spacers began to see their enemies as people rather than monsters. Sergeant Williams found herself guarding a group of Vorthak prisoners who had been captured when their transport was disabled. Instead of the proud, arrogant aliens she expected, she met beings who were tired, scared, and homesick. "How long have you been away from your homeworld?" she asked one of them during a quiet moment. 3 years, the alien replied. "My mate has sent me pictures of our children. I have missed so much of their growth." Williams nodded. She had 2 kids back on Earth herself. "War's hard on families." "Yes, I did not expect humans to understand this. We understand more than you might think." Meanwhile, the war itself was changing. Both sides had adapted to their opponent's tactics, leading to a strange sort of stalemate. The humans couldn't match the Dominion's sheer numbers, but their technological innovations and tactical flexibility made them impossible to defeat quickly. The Dominion had the resources for a long war, But human hit-and-run attacks made it impossible for them to bring their full power to bear effectively. More importantly, the cost was becoming unbearable for both sides. Human colonies were under constant threat, forcing them to divert resources from exploration and development to military defense. Dominion trade routes were disrupted, causing economic problems throughout their empire. The turning point came when Admiral Chen captured a major Dominion fleet commander during a battle near the Proxima system. Commander Vexthul was the nephew of Admiral Zexthul, and one of the most respected tactical minds in the Dominion military. Instead of holding him in a standard prison facility, Chen arranged for him to be housed on a human colony world where he could see how human civilian society actually functioned. What he discovered there challenged everything he thought he knew about humanity. "Your people live without fear," he observed to his human guide, a local mayor named Johnson. "Well, we have the usual worries," Johnson replied. "Bills to pay, kids to raise, crops to tend. But no, we're not afraid of our government or our neighbors. On Dominion world, citizens must always be careful. Say the wrong thing, fail to show proper respect, and punishment follows quickly." Johnson shrugged. "Sounds exhausting. How do you get anything done if everyone's walking on eggshells all the time?" It was a simple question, but it made Vexthul think. How much of the Dominion's resources were spent on maintaining control through fear? How much creativity and innovation were lost because people were afraid to take risks or suggest new ideas? When Chen visited him a week later, Vexthul had questions of his own. "Admiral, may I ask why your people fight so effectively? Your military coordination is remarkable. Yet your society appears to be built on individual freedom rather than discipline." Chen considered the question carefully. "We fight well together because we choose to fight together. Every person in our military is there by their own decision. Every colony that contributes to the war effort does so because they believe in what we're fighting for." "And what are you fighting for?" "The right to make our own choices. The right to succeed or fail based on our own actions. The right to be human in whatever way that means to us." Vexthul was quiet for a long time. "On my world, we are told that freedom leads to chaos, that only strong leadership can prevent civilization from collapsing." "Maybe that's true for some species," Chen said. "But humans seem to do better when we're trusted to make our own decisions. We make mistakes, but we learn from them, and when we succeed, it's really ours. Even if success means war with a galactic empire." Chen smiled grimly. "Especially then. Nobody chose this war for us. We're fighting it because we chose to fight it." Back on Nexus Prime, the news of Vexthul's capture and the ongoing stalemate was causing serious political problems for the Dominion leadership. Several client species were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about why the mighty Dominion couldn't defeat a single human planet quickly and decisively. Admiral Zexthul found himself in the unusual position of being asked for his honest assessment of the military situation. "The humans cannot be defeated through conventional warfare," he reported to the High Council. "They adapt too quickly, they learn from every engagement, and they have shown no sign of weakening resolve despite significant losses." "Then we escalate," suggested war leader Krovthak. "Bring in the full battle fleets. Destroy their homeworld. That would require pulling forces from other sectors," Zexthul pointed out, "and there is no guarantee of success. The humans have shown remarkable ability to hide their true capabilities until needed." Emperor Zarthok himself, ancient ruler of the Dominion, finally spoke from his throne. "What do the humans want?" he asked. It was such a simple question that the entire council fell silent. In all their discussions of military strategy and political consequences, they had never actually considered what humanity's war aims might be. "To be left alone, I believe," Zexthul said finally. "They do not seek to conquer us or destroy us. They simply refuse to submit to us. And if we agreed to leave them alone, I believe they would be willing to negotiate a peace agreement." The emperor leaned back in his throne, looking older than his many centuries. For the first time in his long reign, he was facing an enemy who couldn't be conquered, wouldn't surrender, and didn't want anything from him except to be left alone. It was a completely new experience. "Arrange a meeting," he said finally. "It is time to speak with these humans directly." The meeting took place in neutral space, at a small research station that had been abandoned during the early days of the war. Emperor Zarthok arrived with a small fleet of ceremonial ships, their hulls polished to mirror brightness and decorated with the symbols of 1,000 conquered worlds. Admiral Chen came with a single vessel, the UES Harmony, a diplomatic ship that had been hastily converted from a cargo hauler. The contrast said everything about the two civilizations. Emperor Zarthok was ancient even by Dominion standards. He had ruled for over 8 centuries, guiding the empire through countless expansions and conquests. He had received the submission of hundreds of species, accepted tribute from thousands of worlds, and never once doubted that the Dominion way was the only path to true civilization. Now he sat across a simple table from a human female who looked young enough to be his great-granddaughter, and found himself genuinely uncertain for the first time in memory. "You wish to negotiate," Chen said simply. "Here we are." "Your people have fought well," the Emperor acknowledged. "Better than we expected, but this war serves no one. Too many die for no purpose." "We agree," Chen replied. "The question is how to end it. Submit to Dominion authority. Accept our guidance. Your people will be treated fairly under our rule." Chen shook her head. "That's not an option. We won't trade our freedom for safety." "Then what do you propose?" "Recognition of human sovereignty over human space. A formal treaty establishing borders that both sides agree to respect. Trade agreements if you're interested. Cultural exchange programs. Maybe some joint research projects. We could probably learn useful things from each other." The Emperor stared at her. In 8 centuries of rule, no one had ever suggested that the Dominion should treat another species as an equal. The very concept seemed impossible. "You ask me to abandon everything the Dominion stands for," he said slowly. "Do we?" Chen asked. "You've built an impressive civilization. Thousands of worlds, millions of species, technologies we can barely imagine. That's not threatened by recognizing that humans prefer to govern themselves. It sets a precedent. Other species will demand the same recognition. Maybe they should have it." The silence that followed was so complete that Chen could hear the hum of the station's life support systems. "You would destroy the natural order of the galaxy," the Emperor said. "Finally, what's natural about it?" Chen asked. "You conquered those species through force, not because they chose to join you. If they're only staying because they're afraid to leave, maybe the system isn't as stable as you think." Emperor Zarthok had spent centuries believing that the Dominion's way was the only path to galactic peace and prosperity. The idea that it might be built on foundations of fear and coercion was not something he could easily accept. But the war with humanity had forced him to see things differently. For the first time, he was dealing with a species that couldn't be conquered and wouldn't be intimidated. It was making him question assumptions he had never thought to examine. "And if I agree to this recognition," he said slowly, "what assurance do I have that humans won't use their freedom to attack the Dominion?" "The same assurance we have that you won't attack us," Chen replied. "None except common sense and mutual interest. We don't want to conquer your empire. We just want to be left alone to develop in our own way. You could be lying. We could be. So could you. But we've been fighting for almost a month now, and neither of us has tried to exterminate the other's civilians or destroy their homeworlds. That suggests we both have some sense of proportion." The Emperor considered this. It was true that both sides had fought with surprising restraint, focusing on military targets and treating prisoners humanely. Perhaps these humans were different from the conquest-minded species he was used to dealing with. "What about your military capabilities?" he asked. "You have hidden much from us." Chen nodded. "We have. Just like you've held back your full fleet strength. Both of us have been testing the other, trying to win without committing everything we have. And if we cannot reach an agreement, then we keep fighting until one of us can't fight anymore. Is that really what you want?" The Emperor was quiet for a long time, thinking about the reports he had received from the front lines. Human prisoners who helped treat Dominion wounded, Dominion officers who spoke respectfully of human tactical innovations, stories of enemies who had become, if not friends, then at least people who understood each other. "There is another consideration," he said finally. "Other species within the Dominion are watching this conflict closely. They see that it is possible to resist us effectively. If we grant humans what they ask for, others may demand the same. Would that be such a bad thing?" Chen asked. "We're not suggesting you abandon the Dominion, just that you govern it through cooperation rather than conquest. It would mean the end of everything I have built. No, it would mean the beginning of something new, something that might be better for everyone involved." Chen leaned forward slightly. Emperor, with respect, what you've built isn't sustainable. Fear only works as long as you're stronger than everyone else combined. But we've shown that determination and innovation can match raw power. Other species are learning the same lesson. She gestured toward the stars visible through the station's viewport. The galaxy is a big place. There's room for different ways of life, different approaches to civilization. The Dominion could be the leader of a coalition of free worlds instead of an empire of conquered ones. And you believe such a system would work? I believe it's worth trying. The alternative is endless wars as more species decide they'd rather fight for their freedom than live in fear. Emperor Zarthok had not reached his position by being unable to recognize truth, even when it was uncomfortable. The human was right about the unsustainability of rule through fear. The war had already inspired 3 minor rebellions in distant sectors, and his military commanders were reporting morale problems as soldiers began to question what they were fighting for. What you propose would require significant changes to Dominion law and policy, he said. Changes often do, Chen agreed, but the alternative is watching your empire tear itself apart. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both sides made concessions. The humans accepted some limitations on their military expansion, while the Dominion agreed to begin a gradual transition from imperial rule to a federation structure for willing member species. The Treaty of Mutual Recognition, as it came to be known, established humanity as the first sovereign species within Dominion space. It also created a framework for other species to petition for similar status if they could demonstrate the capability for self-governance. Not everyone was happy with the agreement. Hardliners on both sides considered it a betrayal of their core principles. Some Dominion military leaders resigned in protest, while some human colonies complained that they should have demanded more concessions. But for most people, the end of the war was welcome news. 6 months after the treaty was signed, Admiral Chen found herself aboard the UES Explorer, humanity's newest deep space vessel, preparing for a joint exploration mission with a mixed human-Dominion crew. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperation, human engineering principles combined with Dominion technology to create something neither species could have built alone. Her second in command was Commander Vexthal, the former Dominion prisoner who had become one of the strongest advocates for the new alliance. Their friendship had become a symbol of the changing relationship between the two civilizations. The probe data from the Kepler 442 system is interesting, Vexthal reported. Possible signs of intelligent life. First contact protocols are in place, Chen replied. Whatever we find out there, we approach with respect and caution. A young ensign on the bridge, a Zephyrian whose people had recently voted for independence from direct Dominion rule, looked up from his station. Admiral, what do we do if they're hostile? Chen smiled. The same thing we always do, Ensign. We try to understand them first. We offer friendship if possible. We defend ourselves if necessary, and we remember that every species has the right to choose their own path. Even if their path leads to war, especially then. Freedom includes the freedom to make mistakes. As the Explorer jumped to hyperspace, carrying its mixed crew toward unknown worlds and new possibilities, Chen reflected on how much had changed since that day when the Endeavour had accidentally stumbled into Dominion space. The galaxy was still a dangerous place. There were still conflicts to resolve, mysteries to solve, and challenges to overcome. But now, at least, some of those challenges would be faced by choice rather than by force. And that, Chen thought, made all the difference. The human motto that had emerged from the war had become popular throughout the reformed Dominion. We don't flinch. But Chen preferred the unofficial version that the crew used among themselves. We adapt, because in the end that's what humans did best. They adapted to whatever the universe threw at them, found ways to survive and thrive, and kept moving forward no matter what. Even when the universe threw them into a galactic empire, they adapted, and somehow they helped the empire adapt too.